Okay, so we will be building this project on top of a starter kit, which I use in most of my TALL stack and filament projects these days. It's not an original preset. You'll probably recognize it. Let me show you basically what we have. So we have a very simple landing page, header, footer layout, super customizable. We haven't added any elements inside of these. We have basic authentication pages. We have a login page. We have a sign up page. And you're probably recognizing these are just taken. This is essentially the same preset that is provided from the official TallStack website. You can visit the repo over here by clicking on this link. And you have the documentation over here. You have two options. You can install it without authentication, or you can install it with authentication by adding this flag, which is what we basically built our preset on top of. It is this. Now, we just changed a couple of things, as you noticed. We have our own branding color, so we just swapped out some hard-coded colors with our own variables. You probably also noticed that we have a couple of buttons by default. We have an app.scss file, which basically has a couple component classes already defined for us. Essentially, it's the same concept adopted from Bootstrap, which is that you have, for example, button in various sizes, and this makes it very easy for us to have a consistent styling throughout our application, while still giving us the flexibility that Tailwind gives us, being a utility library, essentially, where we can easily adjust our components should the need arise. What we're seeing here is the landing page, and that's basically this over here, which we're gonna swap out most of this boilerplate. Pretty much just gives us a little explanation of what is included in the starter kit. So yeah, we have Livewire and Filament already set up, both for the backend and the front end. We can utilize Filament's packages also on the front end with this setup. So for example, we could include a Filament form, we could include a Filament table, notifications, and all the other great powerful stuff that Filament gives us. We also have installed the Laravel debug bar. This is going to be very useful anytime we perhaps encounter a bottleneck in our application, such as maybe an N+1 problem. Okay, so we can kick off our project now. Okay, we're going to start out by just swapping out a bit of the HTML that's included in the landing page. And we're also going to change the color just for the sake of boosting our morale and feeling that we've already done a bit of customization. Now here we're already logged into the admin panel that is included in Filament. If you don't have Filament installed, you can visit the official documentation. It's very easy to follow. We're also going to create a user so that we can log into our admin panel. So we start at Tinker Shell, and using the user factory, we've created a user. Let's take the email, copy paste it. And the password should be password. It's taking a while to log in. Okay, and there we are. So that works. And here's the official documentation if you need to install Filament. It's fairly easy to follow. You should go to the panel builder, and I believe it should be this line. And just require that package. So that comes with that panel builder is customizable, the panel. It should be in this file, admin panel. There you go. You got a couple of different options there. You could set the path, you have a login option, and various other things. Okay, it might not look like much, but basically now we have a solid basis to get started. Admin panel is totally empty right now, but once we've started adding tables to our database, then we'll be able to start creating filament resources. Okay, I'm going to continue by removing some more of that boilerplate from the landing page. We don't need that section, so I've deleted that. You can also apply the container utility class to give a bit more padding and auto margin. All right, looks good enough for me. We can now proceed with the registration page. So remember, we are building a two-sided marketplace, essentially. We're connecting job seekers, that is candidates, with employers or companies. So as is the case in the design that we're following, we want to ask our user when they are first registering on our application, which kind of user they're registering as. Do they want to register as a job seeker or do they want to register as a company? This is information we want to know upfront. So we will add two radio buttons for the user to specify how they want to register. Okay, but before adding those two radio buttons, I'd like to improve the UX a bit. So look how simple the design we're following is. They're only asking for two fields, apart from the radio button, of course. They're only asking for an email and a password. Whereas in our case, what we currently have is adding a bit of friction because we're also asking for a confirmation password and for a name. So I would suggest that we remove these fields so that it gives a better UX essentially. We're reducing the friction, the number of steps to register, essentially. Quick interruption. I just wanted to warn you that the quality of the audio is going to get somewhat poor from here onwards. Gonna probably have to raise your speaker's volume so that you can hear me enough. The reason being, this is actually the very first time I'm recording a tutorial or editing a video, so there were quite a few mistakes I've made, but I do promise to deliver better on the next one. And now, on with our video. Confirm password. Okay, so this I'm simply going to hide it for now. And username, I'm going to delete. Here. So that's actually a name, not a username. Okay. I'm going to delete it. We can actually even delete this too. And now we just have email and password. But the problem is we are expecting a name and we are also expecting the password confirmation. And we have the validation logic here, which says that the name is required and that the password needs to be accompanied by a password confirmation field. So, what's going to happen? Obviously, the way things are right now, it's only asking us for this. Ryan at ryan.com, password. And when I try registering, there you go. The password field must match password confirmation. So that's quite easy. The first one's quite easy. We just have to remove this. Let's try the same thing. Ryan. Should give an error, but it's not. And the reason is because we removed this. So we're not getting the message. So basically, look, if I leave this, and I do the same thing, the name field is required. Okay, so it's checking for a name field, which we do not have. So course, we don't want to have that check. What we're going to do instead is we're simply going to remove this from a public property. That's one. Remove it from the validation. And we're going to remove it from here. That should be okay now. We're still going to have another problem, which is that it's not a nullable column, right? So when we try inserting into the database that entry, since we're not giving it, since we're not specifying a value for this, it's obviously going to run into an error. So let's try that. And sure enough, there we go. The field name doesn't have a default value. So there's a couple of things we can do here. We could simply remove it, but then that would be a problem for SEO. Because the thing is, we want to have something like, we want to be able to search our users like John Doe, for example, right? If we don't have a column for that, we will have to use their IDs, which is not the best way to do things. So if user ID is 45, we're going to have like this. And we don't want that for several reasons. There's no need to get into that, but basically you could get, a malicious user just looping through all your users and scraping your data. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, right? There's a predictable pattern over there. We don't want that. So instead we want something which is, I guess, one, secure, so that we don't have those kind of attacks on us. And two, we want to have SEO, right? So if someone's name is John Doe, we could put John Doe, obviously, that would have some unique identifier with it. So what I typically like to do for the name, first off, I like to call it username. Username just seems more appropriate. So let's go with username. That's going to also require us to update our model. Also, I like to remove the comments here. Don't need those comments. Something like that. There's a couple more things. The user factory. Again, I don't like comments. I'm going to remove those. And let's do that. Username. Hopefully that is just make sure. Fake username. Yeah. It's always with capital N. Okay, it seems to be the same. Username should also be unique. So we're going to add that in. Going to rerun my migration. Let's create 5 users. And you can see that now, previously we were generating a name, Harvey Muller. Now we have a username being generated. Still have the problem that when we try creating an account, bill@gates.com, we haven't specified the username now. So the user's just registered. We need to provide a username. We could simply do something like user and concatenate that with timestamp. And then, of course, the user could update it. So let's see if that works. So currently we have 5 users, and we're going to create 6th user. My name is or my email, ryan@gmail.com. I do not actually own that. I wish I did. Register. And there we go. I am registered. And sure enough, there I am, user, and that's a timestamp. Is it the best way? Could we possibly get conflicting users? Yes. If we have two people who literally register at the exact same time, that's going to cause some issues. But for the time being, I'd say that's okay. Let's keep it the way it is. We can fix it at a later point. All right. So coming back to the design now, I'd like to emulate the same design that we have here, which is basically a split screen with an image to the left and the form on the right. Now, I don't waste too much time. This isn't a tutorial about CSS. CSS isn't my particular favorite subject. So I'm going to use Tailwind UI. I have the premium license right there. I cannot share with you the code, of course, but I can copy it into mine and make a couple of edits as is necessary to get the desired look that we're going for. Okay, so we just copy the HTML. Make sure you're not taking React or the Vue.js code because we're working with blade files. We're not working with Vue or React. We're using Alpine. We're going to copy and paste that in, get the indentation to 4 spaces so that we have a consistency. Now, we're seeing there's a bit of a problem with the padding over here. I wasted quite a bit of time over here. There was this padding that I didn't want on the vertical axis, and I couldn't figure out where it was coming from. And then I realized that the authentication pages, so registration, login, and all those, they are extending a layout called the auth layout, AUTH, which has applied to it, as you can see over here, a couple of utility classes which are adding some padding. So I could either just remove that padding, but maybe that might break something in the other authentication pages. It might ruin their layout. So I figured a better approach would be just creating an extra layout, which basically just has absolutely no padding whatsoever. And anytime I need a very, blank slate kind of layout, I would use that one. That's pretty much what I do over here. Pretty much I just copied the same layout that we had in the auth, copy paste it into the blank.blade file and remove those utility classes. And there we go. Now we have a layout without all that padding. We can remove the red color. I was just using that to check if the padding was correct. And now we can bring back in the original HTML we had for the form. So we're going to reincorporate the custom form that we had built earlier on for the registration. Okay, we paste it back in there. And now we have it with our split screen layout. Indent it. And it's looking good. Okay, we can save that. And there you have it, a split screen with our own login form. Okay, and we've just added our own custom image from Unsplash, and we can commit our changes. Okay, so now we have a custom layout for the registration page. What we need to add now, what's missing is giving the user the option to either register as an applicant, a candidate, or as a company. So obviously that would need to be stored in the database along with the rest of the user's data. So the first thing we need to do is to update our migration file. And we're going to add a column. We could make this an enum. Okay, so here I ran into a bit of an issue. I made a very careless mistake where when I was creating the enum, I forgot to add the .php file extension. So obviously the compiler ran into issues and it took me a while to figure out what the problem was. It was kind of a weird one. Definitely a clumsy mistake on my end. Anyway, we got that sorted. We added the .php extension, and now we are able to create a user with an account type field, which we need to cast so that we retrieve the value and not the entire, key value pair of the enum. And now we should only see the value. Excellent. Earlier, when we were improving the UX by removing a couple of fields, we did or rather, I forgot to remove the password confirmation field as a property, rather. So I've removed it now. And instead, we're adding a property for the account type because our form is going to ask the user to specify whether he wants to register as a candidate or as a company. Put in a rule there. So whatever value he enters has to be one of the cases that we defined in our enum. Now, this isn't the best way to validate it because technically we might in the future add another account type with a higher privilege, such as admin. So right now we have, we have candidate, we have company. What if we added something like admin in the account type enum? Well, with this kind of validation, there's nothing stopping from a hacker manipulating the value of the radio button to admin and, granting himself a higher privilege. But anyway, for the time being, this will serve us well. We can always refactor later on. Okay, we can now proceed with adding the two radio buttons. First, I just want to make the form a bit wider so we can fit them in nicely. We're not too concerned about style for the time being. We can add some nice styling later on. Let's see. We should now have 7, I believe. Okay, 3. I don't want to have 3 users. I guess we already reseeded the database. Let's see what we have. Account type is null. Did we forget to make it a fillable type? Let's see. My guess is indeed we forgot to make this fillable. Okay, so basically we were supposed to have included this column. If you want to allow column to be fillable, as the user implies, as the name implies rather. Okay, so let's just do that again. Okay, let's see. Fourth one, and indeed it's a candidate. Let's try as a company now. Register. And I keep clicking the wrong plugin. Company. And now the fifth one is indeed a company. So this one's a candidate, and this one's company. Excellent. And what happens, as we've already seen, if we do not specify, sorry, so if we do not specify Ryan at pajama.com, password, register, and the count type field is required. Okay, the radio buttons we had right now were just temporary. Now I'm swapping them out with some better styled ones. I've also defined a CSS component class, radio btn, and we are using Alpine to conditionally style the selected and unselected radio buttons. And of course, we do not check the state of the radio buttons against the account type property that we defined in the component. That would just be putting an unnecessary load on the server. So instead, we're just going to use Alpine to track that state. Okay, and the radio buttons are looking great. We could make them a bit more mobile responsive, perhaps by not wrapping the text or stacking them in a column. Okay, and that's looking great. Okay, let's review what changes we've made so far. Okay, so we can quickly go over all the changes we've made. So essentially, we've added a new column to our users table, account type. And now in our registration component, in our Livewire register component, the user is expected to pass in an account type field. It is required, and it has to satisfy this rule, where basically it has to be either one of these two. It has to either be candidate or it has to be company. Same thing in our factories. We are by default making candidates. Of course, we'll make that overrideable. And we've added a CSS component class for styling our radio buttons. So we'll be able to use this throughout our application to get these nice buttons here, which are branded with the primary color. Change the dimensions a bit here just to allow for a wider form. Okay, pretty much that's it. Okay. Git add all, git status, and now simply we say user can register as company or candidate. Nice and simple. I made some more minor changes. I decided to actually flex the two radio buttons in a row side by side. I think it looks a bit nicer because this way the register button kind of pops out more, it's a bit more prominent. And also I noticed that in the toll stack preset that we're using, there was some legacy code from Livewire 2 where we have model defer. By default now, wire model is already, it differs by default, right? So there's no need to add the dot defer. Again, this is for Livewire 3. So if you're on Livewire 3 or if you're upgrading from 2 to 3, you can learn more about that in the official upgrade guide documentation. Okay, let's get back to the backend now. So we haven't really done much with the database so far. We just added two columns, made some changes to the users table, but now we're going to start creating some more tables. And the first two tables we're going to look at are the candidates and the companies table. Let's start with the candidate. So we will create, using the artisan command, we will create a model for the candidate, and we'll also create a migration file as well as a factory. I'm not going to create a seeder file because I usually prefer to have a single seeder file. Migration file. I'm going to remove the boilerplate comments. These are not necessary. And I'm going to paste in the following. Timestamps. I will also add some soft deletes. I think it's with the, I'm not too sure. Let me just double check about that. Yeah, soft deletes. And actually this, I prefer not to store as an enum. There's a good article about that. I will link it in the description. So instead I will store the sex as a string, possibly even just as a character. I'm not too sure about that. Can make it 1, make it nullable, and I'll just remove that. Okay, I'm going to be looking at these to get an idea. I'm taking this as a reference. It's another project that I've worked on, also a marketplace, it just so happens. So we have the first name, last name, nullable. Sex could indeed just be a character, and it can be nullable. It's always a good idea. Nullable phone, I would make it nullable. Timestamps and soft deletes. To be honest, the phone could be a common attribute of the users, I would say. So I will remove that. Possibly I'll add it somewhere common, and then we'll see. Okay. And I'll probably want to add an avatar. That's a good idea. A bio. A bio could be good. Nationality is not really necessary for this project, so I'm just going to steal this and put it here. Bio, avatar. Okay, very nice. I'm going to remove a couple of things. And let's do this. I'd say that's pretty fair. From 18 to 15, to 50 years old, that's pretty much what the workforce is typically going to be. The DOB should probably be a cast, detected casts. DOB, which is a dates. And over here, we're pretty much going to have everything. So one thing I like to do, they're all pretty much nullable. And we will use the soft delete straight. We also want to add the relationship to our user model. Okay, so let's see our factory, how that's getting on. It looks pretty good. PHP artisan, migrate, refresh. No need for C, just refresh. So we have no users at this point, and we would actually have to do composer done autoload, and that seems to have worked. We have Melissa there. Date of birth is being stored as a timestamp. I don't want it that way, so we can fix that. She is indeed female, and we have a little bio for her. Okay, simple enough. So we should be able to create quite a few now. We could create 50. There we go. Fred, Mia, Elsa, Hunter, Kathleen, all pretty young. Well, Pietro, Elisa. Okay, we got our candidates, and obviously we should have just as many users because each time we're creating a candidate, we're creating an associated user that owns that candidate profile, right? Because a candidate has a profile, and a user has a candidate profile, and the candidate profile belongs to a user. We have that relationship. And in fact, we could actually get our candidates with their user profile, and we can simply do this. And that is basically eager loading the relationship. So we have, for example, Fred. This is his profile details. And these are his account details. So his username, his email. These are certain confidential things we don't really want to share, you know, on the customer facing part of the application. Okay, perfect. So now we're going to do something very similar, but for the companies instead. Just to recap, we have created a factory, a migration file, and a model for candidate. We're going to do the exact same thing for companies. So once again, we use the artisan command, make model. We can call it company. We need a migration. We need a factory, but we do not need a seeder. There we go. Once again, we delete the boilerplate comments. I don't like that. It's just a preference of mine. And these are pretty much the fields we're going to add. Very similar. We have a foreign key to the user model, because to the users table, because obviously, again, we have a user owns a company and a company belongs to a user. The name of the company, description, could be even a bio maybe, website, email, phone, contact details. Logo is probably going to be a SVG file or something. So the way Filament works is we probably want that to be stored as a text. Industry, right now it's a string, but we might make this possibly a foreign key later. Or maybe we just don't do anything. Size, founded year, and the revenue they're making. It's not really something too important, to be honest, but anyway, why not? Just for the sake of having. And you know what? Once again, I'm going to add the soft deletes. It's always a good practice. So we go to the company model, and we're going to, first off, we're going to add the, no, I really should get PHP Storm. Okay, we're going to have our protected fillable array. Once again, and we should also specify, because the way things are right now, everyone's being created as a, if we look at the user factory, everyone is being created by default as a candidate. We obviously do not want that. User count, I think it was 51, right? And actually we need to rerun our migrations. So PHP artisan migrate, refresh. Okay, and user count is 0. Candidates, company, factory, create. Company not found. Once again, we have to do composer, autoload. Or we could have simply imported it, but anyway, clear the screen. And once again, now it looks fine. We've created a company. We have a company name, description for the company, a website, kind of a weird one. It's good. Okay, anyway, email, phone number, no logo, industry, it's just a random word. We have an address, the size of the company. I think this will correspond. I will have to look into this 1 second. Okay, so this we probably want it. Let me just leave this out for the time being. We'll probably use an enum for that. Right, company size, founded year, revenue. Okay, but the problem is it seems fine, right? Look at company count, company find 1. But the truth is, if you eager load the relationship, you will see that this company has been generated with an associate user record that is a candidate. We obviously do not want that. We want that for the candidate, obviously. So we'll create candidates factory create. Of course, this is the second user now. Look, this is a candidate, we want that, but for the first user, we actually wanted this to be a company. So what we're going to do is, inside of our factory, we're going to specify that account type should be account type. To be honest, this is kind of over-engineering it with the enums and everything, but anyway, it's always better. Company. And we're going to have to import that. It was an enum account type. And to be honest, I'm going to do the same thing, just to play it on the safe side. I'm going to do the exact same thing for the candidate factory. But instead, candidates. I have my own custom command over here. And when I run that, essentially, it will execute it will seed, but with only the demo seeder class, which is this one. Because I like to have 2 different seeder files, one which is specifically just for demoing stuff, and another one which is for production. Because sometimes you need to seed. There are certain things which are fixed, such as categories and countries or whatnot. So I keep those in a separate file. And right now this is doing absolutely nothing. But what we wanted to do is to generate five companies and 100 employees. Not employees, 100 candidates, job seekers. So PHP artisan, migrate, refresh, excellent. And right now, user count should be 0 because we've just refreshed the database. Now I'm going to do this artisan database demo. This is a custom artisan command which I have defined. We looked at it earlier. Demo, I forgot what I called it, but it was this one, seed sample data. It's a custom command. If I run artisan database demo, this will see the database with sample data for demo purposes. So obviously you can even see that if you do PHP artisan, it's going to be listed right over here. Database demo, see the database with sample data for demo purposes. That saves me the hassle of going inside Thinker each time, you know. Very powerful. So PHP artisan database demo, hopefully this works. And there's an error, very silly error. Yeah, it's correct. Company is 5. There we go. Okay, excellent. Now could be a really good time to slowly start building the admin panel before building the actual customer-facing part of our website. Okay, so now moving on, we can get back to the front end of our application. Not the customer-facing part of the front end, but rather what the administrators and the website owners and team essentially would be able to log into so they can manage and oversee what's going on the platform. And for that, what I recommend is a package called Filament. Filament is actually a bunch of packages. It's a whole ecosystem. And you can build admin panels. It's probably most famously known for helping you out with building admin panels. And that's exactly what we're going to do over here. But we will explore we will also explore Filament on the front end in this project. Okay, so let's start off by, we've done a lot of backend work now. We have in place a customer, no, sorry, not a customer, we have a company and a candidate model, right? We already have migrations for them. So companies table and what was the name? Candidates table. And what Filament's going to do, it's going to be able to create these for us. So let's start with the companies. Let's start with our company model. So just go to the panel builder documentation and let's see the getting started with resources. This is what we're going to do. PHP artisan make filament resource and in our case company. But we're going to add a couple of flags, a couple of options. Not simple, that would just be a modal. What we want is the normal one with pages, view page, edit page, etc. And we're also going to use the generate flag because that will basically generate all the fields that we need by reading our database. Also, you will not be able to interact with deleted records unless you add this. Password. So we've run into an issue, and that is basically because we had refactored our users model to have a username field instead of a name field. So let's go through the docs, configuring usernames attribute. By default, Filament will use the name attribute of the user to display their name in the app. Changes, you can implement the has name contract. Mistakes. Also, there's the accessing. And we'll just make it true for the time being. Okay, that works. That's a username. Of course, if we actually just registered, it would be using yeah, that's my username. Okay, cool. We can go ahead and create our first filament resource, which is going to be the candidate, or company rather, let's do that. Generate, and we want soft deletes. There we go. Get status. Git add all. Git status. We have 4 new files. Okay, let's see what that did. Companies. You know, I could actually speed this up by running, I think I have the command somewhere in the readme file. PHP artisan icon cache. You can run this and it should speed up your app considerably. The another thing is in the debug bar. You should, the views are set to false already, okay. And this played icons manifest file generated successfully. Okay. And pretty much that's it. Email, revenue is a strange number, size, we probably just need to run the migration again. I will do the same thing. I will make it generate. And now, if we go here, of course we have to log in again. So we can combine the sex field, date of birth, which we could actually calculate the age from that using the since. So there's quite a few things we can change. And there should be an avatar also, but I'm not seeing that, but we can make that no problem. And this is We don't want this like that. You know, maybe we'll just remove this. It's going to be a bit confusing. Okay. Candidates. Okay, so we have a very basic, we have a good starting point essentially for managing candidates and companies as the admin. Okay, so, okay, let's do some customizations now. Alrighty, so the first thing we want to do is we want to basically bring first name and last name into a single column. We're going to merge them into a single column. Now we could do that with accessors and or mutators, but my preferred approach would be to essentially go inside the candidates table, and just after the last name, we're going to add a virtual column, full name, where basically we're not storing the first name, we don't have redundant data. It's basically a computed, like a calculated column. It basically takes the first name and last name and joins them together, of course, with a space in between. And if we're going to have to, unfortunately, rerun our migration. And once again, see that. If we come back to the candidates and we refresh, we have first name, last name. If we refresh, we now have a full name. And if we go into Tinker, okay, candidates, find the first candidate, we get the full name retrieved also. So now what we can do is we can go back to our candidate resource, and inside the table we can replace this with full name. Now, I'm not too sure about searchable. Let's see if this works. I'm not sure if it's searchable because it's just a virtual column. We're gonna have to log in once again. Sorry about this. Let's take this user. And there we go. Now, I'm not sure. Let's see if that works. It seems to work. Yeah. Okay, that seems to work, which is nice. That's nice. Okay, so search does work. Well, that's the whole point, actually. That's why we're using virtual columns. Excellent. Okay. Now, another thing we might want, could be nice to have, would be the calculated age for each user here. And we would do that by essentially adding an attribute. So I will go back in the candidates, candidate.php file, and basically using Carbon, we can calculate that as an age. Now all that's left to do is make a text column. We could make it sortable, but to be honest, it's not really necessary. Let's see. There we go. Unknown column age in order clause. Because it's not a virtual, that's the thing, right? So it's an attribute you cannot calculate, but technically we already have the date of birth. We could, I think there's a way that we can Yeah, we could just modify, like calculate along this. Okay, so I'm just going to remove the sortable. Doesn't make sense. We already have that. Refresh, and there we go. We can sort by their date of birth. Same thing essentially. Okay, this is looking pretty okay-ish for the time being. I don't think we're really going to be creating anyone here, so I'm not gonna worry so much for the time being about the create over here. We can do that later. It's not an issue. Let's come to the companies. Okay, we have company name, email, phone, headquarters, founded year, and their revenue. I'm going to just change the factory a bit for the companies because I'm not really happy with the website that's generating fully qualified URLs here. I just want a domain, parker.com, hop.com, heathcote.com. So let's go through the documentation and let's see what we find. Domain name. This is the one we need. Domain words, TLD. Let's go with domain name. That one seems fine. Yeah, URL is not what we want. If I try that, Gaylord, lovely, super gay. Seems pretty good. So what I'm going to do now is come in the website and domain name. Let's see, is there anything else we want changed? I think the company names look good. Emails look fine. Industry is changing. The revenue is kind of weird. So the revenue is a bit strange. Let's let's knock off 3 zeros and then we'll multiply it by 1,000. I don't know why we don't just use random. Same for this, I think random is okay. Now, let's see what we have. We have domain names, they look a lot better now. And the revenue, still kind of weird, but I think it's okay. I think it's okay. It's a lot of revenue. It's not very realistic. Let me go through it again and see why. It's a bit too much. We could actually do it to the power, right? That seems pretty good. And Okay, that looks pretty realistic. Okay, I like it. Merrick. Yeah, you could just fast forward all this. To be honest, it's very boring. It's going to be me pretty much just changing the appearance and getting ideas from some other projects, filament projects that I've worked on. Super boring to be honest. So under the name, I will put the address. It's not post, it's a company record headquarter address. Could make it searchable, possibly. Kind of just want everything to fit in. That looks quite nice. That could be a link. Not sure how to make it a link. Okay, we can also move the contact columns to the bottom. We don't need them. They're not really the most important when, kind of just browsing through. So I'm going to be the first thing we're going to look at. We're more interested in figures, how long company's been around, its revenue, this kind of stuff. It's usually a lot more valuable. Okay, it's looking a bit better now. Okay, I think that looks a lot nicer. So immediately we see the company name, their address, what industry they're in, how large they are, what your... Yeah, okay, I think that looks pretty nice. Okay, so now it's time to get back to the front end, and we're going to start building out pages, both for the candidates as well as for the companies who are looking to employ someone. So I'm not a UX designer, which is why I'm going to take inspiration from a popular website, which I'm sure you all know, Indeed.com. So let's focus on what a job listing page might look like. Let's find the job listing. Let's take this one. So if there's anyone out there looking for a job, WebRock Media are hiring right now. Okay, so here we go. This is pretty much, this is a good example. Can copy. Okay, so let's ignore the search functionality for the time being. So what we need is a title for the job listing. So this is the job listing database schema. We need a title. We need obviously, well, that's going to be a relationship to the company. So company relationship. We could just do it as remote. So type, location type, I guess. Full-time, contract type, I guess. Apply, bookmark, profile insights. Okay, what skills? It's going to be relationship. Education requirements, possibly. Oh, spell. Description. And pretty much that's it. It would be a couple more things like salary. Okay, let's go with these basically. We're going to create our next model. PHP artisan make model job listing. We're going to need a migration for that and also a factory. And once again, we will not make a seeder. Move to boilerplate comments. Okay, and we're going to add probably the following. So we have a title, description. The employer ID could be the company ID. Profession. Nope. Locality. Also not for the time being. Minimum and maximum salary. Closing dates. Status. I would store this as a string. Publish that. Expire that. Select timestamps. Okay. closing dates. And I'm not making enough for that. So okay. And we need all these. Possibly we don't want that to be fillable. It should be basically handled by our authentication middleware. And we also have to cast a couple of things. That would make more sense. And we need to define our relationship. And let's define, once we're at it, the inverse of that relationship. Okay, so we should be able to run this. Okay, that surprisingly worked. So plumber, okay, a couple of stuff. It's company ID. So we should be able to load it with its relationship. Okay, perfect. Yeah, it would actually really help if I created a fake user. Yeah, let's do that. That would make things a lot easier because each time. Okay, so let's come back to demo seeder. user factory create, and I'm going to do it. Email is admin@admin.com. Okay, and we have our job listings just over here. Very nice. So we have our job listings now. Install and repair, cafeteria cook, writer or author, technical specialist. This is the salary. We could make that money with euros. Obviously, we should define in a constant or in some kind of settings what exactly the currency should be, but status. Okay, this, I'd like to make this an enum. This should be an enum. Okay, let's make that an enum right there. This should be red, green, and yellow. Essentially, it's going to be something very similar to this. So what I'm going to do is, let's open this on the side. This is what I always do. You know, I'm not the best at memorizing syntax, so I usually just refer to another file. And if I go to the job listing, I would need to cast my enum. Now we can make the badge column searchable. Not really. There we go. Perfect. Okay, excellent. I think the publish that we could make it since. So publish that could be since. Four months ago. One day ago. Yeah. And I could make that default sorting. Yeah, let me make that default sorting actually. So, okay, so let's add this created at, actually, let's do it. Publish that. And now if we refresh, there we go. We get the most recently published. Well, technically, these are obviously our fake data doesn't make sense if this is a draft that has been published. But anyway, we'll fix that later. I'm not too sure about the minimum and maximum salary right now, if we're going to include that. So maybe I'll just hide them for the time being. It's just taking up space. Let's hide them for now. Okay, great. So we can see the company, what job they're looking for, salary, closing dates, closing date. Okay, when it was published, I'd say that's pretty solid for the time being. Okay, candidates, companies, job listings. There we go. Get on pretty well. Can we filter by the company? Let's try. Let's find Armstrong. Okay, and they have 5 job listings. Okay, perfect. So, moving on. Now we can start doing the fun stuff. So let's do this. When the user clicks on the Find a Job button, that will take him to the jobs page where he can search for a job. Okay, so now we're in the web.php file, and what we're going to do here is we're going to define the route to the job listings page. Now, we're not going to build this as a traditional Blade file. Instead, we're going to build it as a Livewire full page component, and the reason being that we want to have interactivity on this page. So basically, the user will be able to filter results and be able to search. And for that reason, we need interactivity, a lot of back and forth with the server. So let's do, it's going to be a GET request. The route is going to be jobs. And we're going to call it job listing index. And as for the name, listings. I'm just going to do listings. It's a lot simpler, I think. Listings.index. I'm going to have to comment that out temporarily, otherwise this filament command won't work. PHP artisan make. It's not filament, sorry, it's a Livewire command. I think it's Livewire component. Make Livewire. There, yeah, okay. PHP artisan make Livewire, and we're gonna call it job listing index. Job listing index. If I go to, can bring that one back in. Job listing index. It's going to return this. Okay. Job listing index.blade. This is where all the jobs will be. And my welcome blade. Why did I make this a button? This should be a square. That should not be a button. Okay, so let's just do this. Should be an anchor tag, href, and this should also be a closing tag. And this will be dynamically generated route listings.index. There might be something wrong with the styling now. What's this? Valid route action. Did I forget to import? Joblet. Yeah, I forgot to import it. Okay. Silly me. Livewire job listing index. Yeah, so I anticipated that would happen. Yeah, so anchor tags work in a kind of strange way. We just need to add some margin top there. It's a bit too much, but it's okay. This is where all the jobs will be. Excellent. So that's working. Excelente. So I could actually do this minimum height screen, and we could also add container, but maybe not just yet. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's okay. This is where all the jobs will be. And yeah, let's put a container while we're at it. And what I want to do is an unordered list and job. Now we're just gonna loop through all our jobs basically. So for each, or rather for else, or for empty. For else or for empty? What was the name? I think for else. Empty and for else. Okay, if it's empty, we're gonna say no results matched your search. And otherwise, we're going to display these. And listing title. Then H3 tag. And we're going to use beautiful Tailwind. Bold text, large, text gray, 800. Just for a bit of styling. And for the time being, let's just do margin bottom 4. Maybe a bit of padding, padding 4, why not? And background white, I guess. Could be nice. And here we could have background gray 200. Okay, and we're gonna do for else listings in or as. I think as, I'm starting to mix up languages. Now obviously we need to pass in those listings. So coming back here, we need to first import use app. And let's do a really simple query at this point. Job listing, all. We should actually be eager loading. I'm going to explain that in just a second. So I'm going to pass in our beautiful job listings as listings, put a comma. That should work. Oh, there we go. Look at that. Not paginated. It's, I mean, this is as basic as it gets, really. This is cool. It's nice to see something already. So now there's a couple of things I want to do. Okay, so I'm just giving a little explanation basically. So yeah, we're bringing in all the jobs at this point. We have, how many jobs do we have? If we go in Tinker, job listing, count, that's 100 jobs. That's a lot of jobs right there. And there's a couple of things we need to change. So first of all, let me make a list. There's a couple of things. First off, we only want those which are published. That's the first thing. So for example, okay, let me just explain what's happening right now. So we just passed in, we fetched all the job listings we have using Eloquent. We've passed in that collection essentially to our Blade template, which is this one. It's in the folder Livewire /job listings index. You see Livewire, it's in the views, Livewire job listings index. And now we have access to that. Now, currently we're just running 2 queries. But, okay, and the 2 queries are, this is just because I'm logged in. You see if I was actually logged out, I'm going to sign out right now. It would just run 1 query, right? Because it no longer is fetching user data. Okay. So it's fetching all the job listings, right? Now, it's running 1 query to get that. But what if we wanted to include a couple of things? So we might want to, for example, include the description. That's okay. It's still 1 query. Now, obviously, we're not actually going to include that. It's just taking up too much space. But what if we did want to include the company who's hiring? And we might want to maybe put that over here. Text, extra small, 600. So look what's going to happen. Right now we're only getting one. Right now we're only performing 1 query. But as soon as we access our relationship, every listing belongs to one company. And the company has a name. We want to render the name of the company here. Let's see what happens. I mean, we're just fetching from the same fetch data, right? Oh, will you look at that? Suddenly, from just 1 query, we are running 101 queries. Now that number is no coincidence. We know there are 100 records here, and instead of 1 query, now we're running an extra 100 queries. And the reason is because, well, we have n records, we have 100 records, and if you have n records, you're going to have n plus 1 queries running if you fetch the data like this. So look, just to print the company name with each listing, we're going to have a huge bottleneck here. We're going to have a big problem with the performance. I mean, you know, once you're in production, that's going to be a big issue once you start getting a bunch of requests. So what we do is very simple. We simply eager load. Instead of all, I'm going to say with eager load. That means the company relationship, and then get. And now, once again, we're only running this time 2 queries. Okay, so it's not 1, it's still 2. You know, there is 1 extra query, which is, you know, fetching company's data essentially. But it's not 101. So that was the n plus 1 problem. Okay, and now we've avoided that. And maybe to make this a bit nicer, we could actually do it like this. Query. And there you go. Same thing. Like that, we can easily, you know, cut and paste and, you know, remove or whatever. Like, you know, if you want, like, you know, filter, like, you know, where and all this kind of jazz. Okay. But yeah, we're actually mentioning where, so the where statement. So let's say we wanted to, let's get a status now. And I could put this, for example, yeah, I don't worry too much about design right now. Typically, you first want the design, and then you want to start putting in the dynamic stuff. But anyway, let's put in the listing status. This isn't something we actually want to display. So look, we have those which are published, but we also have the draft and expired. These should not be appearing in our results. They should not be appearing. So obviously, you know, one way around this would be, we could say, you know, where status is published, and now it only returns the published ones. I don't really like that, to be honest. What I want to do instead is have something fluent like this, published and get. But obviously, we get this error. It's not defined. So this is what we call a scope. We want to define a scope. So what I do is I go back in my job listing model, and what I want to do is define a scope for all our records which are published. And we do so by simply doing the following. Pass in the query, and then we filter. Actually we could get the value of the enum. Could use the enum right there. So published, like so. Okay, great. And now if we refresh the page, we should only be seeing published job listings. Now, there's still one other thing we have to do. We would like to paginate the results to make for a better user experience, essentially. And we can easily do that by replacing get function. Instead of invoking get, we're going to do paginate. And we could paginate by, let's go with 5 pages with the 5 results. And then we just need to go over here and include this line, which will generate the pagination links. Okay, let's refresh. And now we're getting only 5 results per page. Okay, the next thing we want to do now is we've added so far a Livewire component, page component, right? For basically listing jobs. Now the reason why we've made this Livewire is because we're going to be doing some interactive stuff, right? Where we're communicating with the server, filtering, pretty much that, well, filtering and searching. We now want to make a page for a single job, right? So we'll click on this will be a link, and that will redirect us to the page of that listing. So what we're going to do, I'm going to go back to our routes, and I'm going to define something like this. Jobs, and if I'm not mistaken, it would be actually I have to look at this. I think it's the job ID, or just ID. Okay, and well, we could use Laravel's route model binding. It's expecting a job listing, so probably something like this. And then we have the job controller, job listing controller. And we'll have a show method on that. And we can name it listings.show. So we have an index, listings and listings.show. Okay. We're gonna have to make this controller. So just see what controls we have right now. Pretty much nothing at this point. Just have some alt controllers. Okay. So I'm gonna make a controller. Job listing controller. Totally empty controller. We're not making a resource controller. Job controller. There we go. And we're gonna add Now you're probably wondering at this point, probably wondering, why are we making this? Why is it that the show route is going to be managed? Show method is going to be managed here in the controller, whereas the index route is basically going to, load up a Livewire page. I'm going to get to that in just a second. And this is basically just going to return a view. Okay, let's just do return listing. And if I go back to this, we can wrap all this in an anchor tag. Proper indentation. And we're going to do this. Routes. Listings. Show. And we're going to have to pass in the listing itself. Let's see if that works. We could also use some hover. That would be nice if we had that. Listings.show is not defined. Pretty sure it is defined. But I just forgot to save. Job listing controller does not exist because we did not import it. So that's going to come here. And yeah, I think that works. Hang on. We forgot to. Yeah, it's good. It's working. Maybe if I do a data dump, might be better. Yeah, and you usually can see, why is there no attributes? Huh. Okay, 1 second. Yeah, because that's the listing. Okay. Now it's correct. Yeah, we had to. Okay, yeah, that's good. And if I simply did return, now it would pretty much give a JSON response, I guess. Yeah, that's right. Very good. Very good, very good. Okay, so moving forward, basically, we're going to obviously return this as a view, and I'll probably name the view listings.show. So that would be in my, I don't know, where should I put it? Components, layouts. Probably put in a pages folder, so pages kind of keeps things a bit more organized. This is the Livewire stuff. Don't want to muddle it up with Livewire. Okay, so this is what I like to do. I like to create a folder, call it pages. That's basically kind of the front end. Well, not really. I mean, even Livewire is front end, obviously. Anyway, pages. Okay. And over here, I'm going to do a new folder called listings. And then we're going to have our show.data.php file. And obviously we have to go back here, save, undefined, okay, yeah, nice. Now, obviously, we're not getting the Tailwind styling and all that because we have to extend our base layout, which is pretty much the base or the app. We probably want the app. So I'm going to just take this. Okay, that obviously doesn't open. There we go. Okay, and now we have this. Yeah, I'd say that's a wrap for now. That's probably a wrap right there. So let's quickly recap what we've just done. So we made a Livewire page component with pagination. Okay, we're running a query, fetching some listings. We pass that to our blade over here, and that is essentially generating this for us with pagination. So this is Livewire. But for the show page, the show route, we're just returning a good old blade file, blade template, right? So this is a Livewire component, but this is a blade file. Cool. And yeah, there's really nothing complicated here. It's literally just returning the view, and we're passing in that listing using Laravel's route model binding. And that's pretty much it. It's just good old blade. Nothing new under the sun over there, right? Perfect. Okay, what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna make these pages look pretty. I'm just gonna fast forward to that. It's not really, I don't, Tailwind and Alpine isn't really the focus of this project. Just something interesting I might slow down.